Okay, what's up guys? Welcome to Boot Codes. Today in this video we're going to talk about the Keras LSTM layer parameters. Okay, so let's get started with the parameters we're going to discuss. So basically we're going to discuss with these 5 parameters, which is the it's frequently used parameters, and also if we see what are the parameters available for this LSTM layer. There are a bunch of parameters. Okay, so here we don't going to discuss all of these parameters because some of these parameters I think you will never use them. So okay, then we will discuss the most used parameters of the Keras LSTM model. I'm gonna make an assumption that you guys already know this what is LSTM and why we should use that likewise, and I'm not gonna talk about that stuff. So I'm basically going to explain what these 4 or 5 parameters does. So the first parameter is units, and second parameter input shape, return sequence, stateful, and return state. Okay, so what this is units. So in this documentation it says the positive integer dimensionality of the output space. So what does mean? So in order to get a better understanding, we should get our hands dirty, right? As you guys know, we get hands dirty. So let's get our hands dirty by here. I'm gonna import these things, that numpy and LSTM input and sequential. So this is being done in our code. So and I quickly made the sequential model and add a layer with LSTM layer. So this first parameter, as you all know, is the units. Okay, so what does this mean? So as the document says, it was the output space shape, dimensionality of the output space. So each LSTM layer should output something, right? So let's see the output. It will look like this. We can predict sample data and look the output like this. So that means this vector is dimension of 2. So if we specify another number here, let's say 4, and run our model, then it will output a vector of dimension 4. That means this units means the dimensionality of the output space. That's the only way that we can explain this one. So our next parameter is the input shape. So it will need 2 parameters. And the first one is how many timestamps do you have in your input. So let's say we want to input a sentence with 2 words. So this one should be the length of that sentence, how many words that contain in that sentence. So this makes 2, and this one is how many features are there in one timestamp. So basically, if we think about let's say if we represent a word by using word to vec, so the vector size of that vector will become 1 here. This actually a feature size of the one timestamp. How many features there are in a one timestamp? This should be it. Okay, so our next parameter is return sequences. So that one is very important. So if we let's type it here. Return RETURN underscore CCQECDS. Okay, return sequence. Let's say it's true. So by default the return sequence is false. That's why we get an output like this. So if we run this, basically run this one and check the output. So let's run this one also. Oh, we received two vectors. Okay, how did you receive these two vectors? Let's go to our PowerPoint. Yeah, so this one is the basic understanding of the data sequence 2 diagram, and this one is I basically extracted from the internet. And here, so let's consider as this RMNS LSTM. So basically these two are equals, So this one is our first time state and this one is our last time state. So as you all know, this one is hidden state outputs, right? This one is the output of the hidden state. This one is another output of the hidden state. So the cell state is passed by this direction to one LSTM cell to another LSTM cell. Okay, you guys know these things, right? So with the return sequence true, each hidden state output is returned. So let's say we have, in our case, we have two inputs, right? The length of one sentence is 2 words. So we have two inputs to the layer and we got two hidden state outputs. Okay, so if we have another layer below that, these hidden layer outputs will be the input to the other layer, like this. Okay, so if we make this false, that means the default one, the return sequence true false is the default one. So only the last hidden state of that LSTM layer is returned. So if we have another layer below that, so this will be duplicated and repeated to all other LSTM cells. Okay, you got it. That's why we have received two vectors. With the return sequence false, we received only, oh my god, yeah, we received only one vector. So that's good, right? If you want to have more data of your sentence, you could go with this return sequence true, and so it will look like it's uh, three-dimensional. Okay, so if you check this and check the shape, so it will be three-dimensional one. If we put this here false, it will be a two-dimensional one. Okay, so you have to manage the dimensionality and deal with it when you are using the return sequence true. So our next parameter will be the stateful. So we should quickly go through this documentation. Here we can find the stateful. If true, the last state for each sample at index I in the batch will be used as the initial state for the sample of index I in the following batch. So if we go to our slide, I will describe with this diagram. So if we have two badges like this, and inside the one badge we have several samples in samples. So let's take one sample here and one ith sample, and when it goes to this our LSTM layer with the return sequence, the stateful equals true layer, it will memorize this last cell state of that batch. Okay, so S1 S minus 1. Then the next batch comes, the ith sample of that batch comes to the LSTM layer. So the initial state to this, the sample will be the last cell state of the previous batch ith sample. Okay, so that's what the stateful means. So we can use this stateful to if our two badges have some relationship. Otherwise, we don't use this stateful true. If some badges have some relationship and badges one is depends with other badge, then we use this stateful true. Otherwise, we don't use this one. Okay, so yeah. So our next one is return state. That one is easy. Let's go to this diagram. I will explain with this one. So first of all, let's go to this one. Okay, let's specify that return state true here. Okay. Okay, let's try to run this one. Okay, it gives an error. It shows us all layers in sequential model should have one single output, a single output tensor. So if we try to use this return state true, we cannot use it with this sequential model. We have to move to Keras functional API. Okay, so let's develop another model with the Keras functional API. So we import this one, and we have imported input in our top, and okay, we can specify the return state true as in this layer. So I assume that you also know about these, the what you call the Keras functional API. So if we run this one, yeah, we will receive three outputs. Okay, three outputs. So if we run again like this. So we have our input shape as 1 by 1. Let's take this as the previous one. So let's make this 2. Okay, so if we run this one, so our output will look like this. So it will output 3 tensors. Okay, so what are these 3 tensors? The first one is the hidden state of the last LSTM cell. So what are these things? So as you see, the first one and the second one are same. Okay, so other one is different. So what this means? So if we go to our, this presentation, the Keras layers actually looks like this, right? So in previously we saw one arrow here. It's actually two arrows. Okay, so one is the hidden state. This one is the hidden state and cell state. So the hidden state and the cell state both are passed to the next preceding cell by the previous cell. Okay, so the return state, what does the return state means is it returns the cell states to the user, to the next layer. So it consists of two things, that the hidden state of that one and the cell state. So the reason for to these things will be similar is we got the hidden state of this output, this cell, and the cell state means hidden state plus the cell state. The cell state means other thing. Okay, well, we can have another name for this one. So yeah, that's all that I'm going to cover with this video. So hope you guys found something useful. So thanks for watching.